Hey guys, it's time for a tremendously popular neighborhood, Ikseon-dong or Ikseon Hanok Village. A village with many traditional Korean houses, a village with many boutiques, trendy cafes, a super popular area. And today, you're gonna explore that area with no one less than Conan.
Besides Ikseon-dong, we will also explore Gyeongun-dong and Unni-dong. They all form roughly a neighborhood. This puts the counter at 77 out of 467 neighborhoods in Seoul. Now, Ikseon-dong has become a top tourist destination over the last few years. Most people have heard about this gorgeous little Hanok village by now. But there's more than the cute cafes, boutiques and bakeries for which people line up. What you're about to hear about Ikseon and nearby landmarks will surprise you and make it much more fun to come to the neighborhood.
So for our first part, we go to a little church. I've seen this church so many times, but I have no clue what it is.
Yeah, so this is the
Cheondokyo.
Cheondokyo, which is an indigenous, original, if you will, Korean religion.
Is it?
Yeah. They trace their lineage back to the Donghak Revolution from the 19th century. The congregation or the religion was a lot bigger, maybe during the Japanese occupation, but the tradition continues to this day. And what we see in front of us is the church and the headquarters of Cheondokyo.
The headquarters.
Where people still congregate every week. From what I understand, they have a service. I don't know what the exact terminology is. Every Sunday. This is a monument to Bang Jung-hwan. Bang Jung-hwan is a person who came up with the term 어린이. 어린이 is a Korean word for children, right? And so he was a guy who started up the children movement.
Is he the one?
Human rights for children.
Is this where Children's Day comes from?
Children's Day comes from, yes. Yes. I don't know how responsible directly he was for the creation of the day, but I'm sure he had a rather central role.
But he has nothing to do with the church, right?
He has something to do with the church.
He has something
was
to do with the
an
church.
active member of the church.
I see.
So there's an interesting story about this church. So this went up in the late 1910s.
Is it that old?
Yeah.
Wow.
So when they were first building it, of course the independence movement day, the 3.1절, was 1919, right? So when this building was going up and they were trying to get permission from the Japanese colonial government, they said, what are you making it so big for? No, it can't be made that big. So they cut down the budget. They suspected they were going to use that money to support independence movement. So the building we see now is about 40%, some people say about a third, or others say about half of the size it was originally intended for. So what ended up happening was, because they had all this money left over, what do you think they did with the leftover money?
Fund the independence movement?
Exactly!
Yeah.
The Japanese plan backfired.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love the entrance lanterns. Very industrial.
This is why I'm doing this series, to find stories like this that will make you remember a place or building forever. Now what's left for us is to go inside and find a way into the Sunday ceremony. The building alone is a little gem to observe, with all its industrial features and 100-year-old stairs. Instead of sending us out, they let us have a look inside. So if you ever see this symbol, you'll know it's them. On the other side of the church, you will find the former residence of Min Byung-ok, a descendant of Empress Myeongseong. It was designed by Park Gil-young, who also designed Hwashin, Korea's first department store. Built in 1936, this modernized traditional Korean house, with restrooms built inside, was a state-of-the-art facility back then.
Oh yeah, from here I can see well.
한국에서 처음으로 그 양변기를 설치한, 그리고 그다음에 한국의 저 건축가 박길용이라는 대표적인 초대 건축가가 설계를 해서 양변기가 설치돼.
선생님 어떻게 잘 알아요? 이렇게?
거기도 다 있잖아요.
All this history in such a small area, and there's even more. From the church in Gyeongun-dong, we cross the street to Unidong for the Ungun Palace, where many people pass without checking it out first. It's what I did too, for many years. I somehow never set foot inside.
Ungun Palace, sort of residential grounds of royal family. It didn't start out as like 창덕궁 or 경복궁, like real proper palace, but it was the living grounds, right? Home of 흥선 대원군, who is the father of the penultimate king of Joseon, right? Gojong. Gojong used to live here, and then after he became king, they sort of renamed it and built it further and called it a gung, or a palace, right? Gojong was in his teens when he first became king, so 흥선 대원군 was de facto ruler, and so everything happened here, right? This was the center of power.
It is gorgeous, and you won't find as many people as inside the big royal palaces. What you can find though, there's a hidden hanok that once belonged to the palace residents but is now private.
It's an unknown house.
Yeongnodang. Yeongnodang was sort of a building annex, if you will, to Unhyanggung. It was handed down to children of Gojong, but the grandson of Gojong actually sold it to a Western doctor.
Okay.
Who used to be primary physician to the first president of Korea, right?
Uh-huh.
Syngman Rhee. And he handed it down to his son, one of his sons, who is the owner or the leader of the largest law firm in Korea called Kim and-chae. What you see here is his father, right? Kim Young's father, his name was Kim Soo-hyun. So they call it Kim Soo-hyun Gao. But it used to be Yeongnodang. Even though this is part of the palatial grounds, if you will, it's now privately owned and, as you can see, walled off.
And I can see, I think, moving sensors, cameras.
To make sure
Nobody
nobody
climbs
gets
over the wall.
too curious.
And it's funny how the wall on all the other sides is like this high, and here it suddenly is over 2 meters. So here it is, the entrance. Very tempting to get close, but I'm pretty sure that somebody will stop us.
It is believed that Kim Jong-moo had, or maybe still does, feast for foreign clients in this hanok.
Andeo? Yeah, this thing here, which is now abandoned, by the way.
Yeah, it's abandoned now. This used to be the Japanese cultural center. Before a long time, there was controversy and contentions around whether a Japanese cultural center here was proper, because this was actually part of the Unhyanggung ground. And there was at some point during the very late Joseon dynasty, or perhaps during the Japanese occupation period, there was a post for Japanese colonial military police right at this site. At later time, a Japanese cultural center took over this building and was operated here.
Which
So
I
there's-
assume is no coincidence, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like
a bit
coincidence,
suspicious.
right? It doesn't seem like coincidence.
The Japanese cultural center moved elsewhere. But what surprised me more was that the Ungun Palace's boundaries reach all the way onto here. Before we move to trendy and touristy Ikseon-dong, let me give you that sky perspective, because it was a lot of information, wasn't it? Sometimes we need a good orientation. Gyeongun-dae's church is over here, together with the modern hanok and the Children's Day monument. The palace and the private hanok are here, and then there's this beautiful building over here, but it's not open to the public, so I won't bother you with what it is. Then it's time for us to go into Hanok Village, which is around here.
Now it's time for the trendy, hip Ikseon-dong.
Yeah, it hasn't been that way for a long time though. So in 2014 or thereabout, the city government allowed the owners to start businesses in the hanoks. Up to the time, right, early 2010s, the whole neighborhood of Ikseon-dong was really just kind of vacated, right? A lot of people have left. The center of Ikseon-dong is 익선동 166 번지, the old address system. It actually also used to be a palace called 무동궁. It was the living area of 철종 before he became king. After he became king, 철종 made it a residential grounds for his brother. So that palace was called 무동궁. And after that, it got passed down through some people and was owned by actually descendant of the royal family called Lee-haeseon. But for whatever reason, he had to sell it. That entire plot of land became available.
It's everything here in front of us, right?
Everything in front of you. So in 1920s, that whole ground becomes available and gets sold, and this urban developer of the late Joseon period, who was also active during the Japanese era, buys the land.
The developer who bought this land was Park Yong-hyo, and he did the overall development by dividing the land into 100 plots, making Ikseon-dong the only planned residential area with a grid street system.
The alleys there are straight, so they look like modern streets, but that was very unheard of back then. It wasn't just like you build these houses and then let's see where you can make a street. No, he planned out this grid, so you'll see that there are 3 vertical streets, and then on the northern end you have 1 horizontal street.
I think that's actually a really cool fact that I was never aware of walking through the Ikseon streets. But then, another developer, Jong Se-kwon, bought a large chunk of this land and divided it into even smaller plots.
But Jong Se-kwon, he's another urban residential developer, and he actually contributed a lot of his wealth to the independence movement. He bought up about 1/3 of all the plots. He divided up the plots and built in these residential houses for the regular poor people. And he only sold to Joseon, to Koreans.
Only to Koreans,
To only Koreans.
not to foreigners, not to
Not to the Japanese.
the Japanese.
Not to
Okay.
the Japanese. Today, a lot of it is the work of Jong Se-kwon.
So the 2 suspected motives were affordable housing for the poor and not selling it to the Japanese, but exclusively for the people of Joseon. The Japanese wanted to move here because it was close to the power center.
And this, you'll see that there were no hills here. This was considered prime location. And so Jeongsaegon, who was wealthy but also very active in the independence movement, he just moved in very quickly. So over here on this side used to be the biggest yojongs.
Yes, and one of the famous yojongs was Ojinam, where Ibis Hotel is now located. In its heyday, it was one of Seoul's top restaurants. Yojongs were the place where Korea's politically powerful brokered backroom deals, while being served and serenaded by female entertainers called gisang, the Korean equivalent of Japan's geisha. The presence of many gisang also attracted a market for hanbok shops and fortune tellers, which is why you will still find several of them in Ikseon-dong. I always thought the yojongs were from 70 years ago, but surprisingly they continued until the mid-1990s. Ojinam's closing in 2010 marked the end of an era.
Here we see something interesting. Modern fortune telling.
Maybe sometime soon there'll be AI.
Who knows? Is there a reason why this is here?
I think it goes back decades at least. At the very least from the days where there were a lot of yojongs here. Some people believe that a lot of people who worked at the yojongs were customers who formed the clientele of fortune tellers.
Is there any reason they were customers? They have like...
Maybe life was rough and
Yeah.
there's cash, a lot of cash. So there are historical records
Yeah.
about the development. And the street plans show the width of the streets.
Uh-huh.
In this alley, it says
Yeah.
2.8 meters, right?
That's about right.
Yeah.
1, 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see people lining up already.
Oily Sogenbang.
For the Sogenbang.
This is really popular for some reason. I don't know what kind of salt bread they make. Oh, you've been here?
It's just so oily.
Mika, all these people disagree with you.
We
Wow.
even have an eating plaza here.
As a German, I'm insulted. No, I mean, I have had better.
Germans and their bread.
No, Sogenbang is not German, so I can't judge. But I have had much better Sogenbang. Let me say that.
Ikseon has changed a lot, but you can still see the old plus and the unmistakable grid shape. However, it is rather touristic, and prices are high. On the weekend there's a lot of waiting, but no one can deny that it's overall charming and gorgeous, with many trends to discover. Before you leave, I must show you one last thing. A view from the rooftop of this former hotel, now cafe.
Look at this. Why nobody goes to the rooftop?
Wow, nobody.
Shit.
Whoa.
And you can see nobody's here on the rooftop. It's just crazy because, first of all, weather is nice. But look at the view. Yeah, check this out.
Crazy, no?
It is crazy.
You would have seen this in 1920, except for all the ACs. Ikseon-dong goes on the map as the first planned residential area with a grid street system. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Houdoe!